Welcome to this archival explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a deep dive on a moment of absolutely unparalleled historical significance. We're going to be unpacking the high-density world-building event that was recorded in Chapter 184, an event known as the Resonance Overdrive. We're going to look closely at the mechanics of a world that was pushed to the very brink of structural collapse, and more importantly, figure out exactly how it was saved. To do this, we're heading straight into the Obsidian Pillars archival collection, specifically Volume 12. We really need to understand the hyperdynamic stabilization of this reality engine. This was a critical epoch. It's the moment where the actual architecture of human character completely rewrote the laws of physical reality. Here is our roadmap for today's historical briefing. We'll be mapping out 5 key stages. First, the instantaneous overdrive. Second, the calculus of harmonization. Third, the Siege of Lyonesse. Fourth, absolute zero at Lethe. And finally, we'll wrap up with the unified matrix. Let's get into it. Part 1. The instantaneous feedback overdrive. Okay, so this entire crisis was set off by a truly terrifying catalyst, the complete and absolute elimination of latency between human thought and physical reality. Imagine a world where your intent instantly manifests as physical matter. In our standard reality, thoughts are private, right? But in this zero-latency reality, if a citizen in Archon's crest felt even a microsecond of subconscious greed, the nearest travertine stone blocks would instantly transform into transparent glass shards. They were literally mirroring their inner thoughts across the sky. And it wasn't just a visual change. The stones vibrated with this hyper-reactive singing hum that actually threatened to liquefy the foundations of all 7 metropolises and totally collapse the network buffer loops. Now, over in the commercial metropolis of Avaris, this feedback overdrive caused absolute chaos. It turned the trading floor into a shifting sea of fluorescent silver fluid. It was in a state of literal liquid superposition. When the merchant princes there tried to hoard green options, the floor projected their internal character geometry into these towering pillars of violet flame, instantly incinerating their private contracts right in midair. And those who tried to just grab and possess everything, they suddenly found their hands encased in blocks of absolute lead, pinning them directly to the floor. Wealth went from being a number to a pure, unavoidable physical metric of spiritual alignment. The situation was dire. As the Council officially noted in Log 884-A, the reality engine was running dangerously hot. The quote reads, "To think is to build, to fear is to destroy." The line between internal psychology and the external environment was just gone. It had completely ceased to exist. High Captain Valerie even observed that a single district's despair could trigger a kinetic rebound so massive it would shatter the entire continental framework. Part 2. The Calculus of Lattice Harmonization. So, how exactly do you fix a reality engine that instantly weaponizes human imperfection? Well, to prevent absolute terminal collapse, Ilyan Marr and Vassago had to engineer a mathematical and philosophical shield. Deep within the subterranean core of the primary obsidian pillar, they came up with the harmonization index. Now, this wasn't just a wall of stone. It was a dynamic, human-centric delay buffer. Essentially, it was designed to act like a transcentric spiritual shock absorber. It provided a conscious buffer margin, allowing the human soul just enough time to correct its microslips before they manifested as instant physical cataclysms. Let's actually break down the parameters of this calculus because it's fascinating. It meticulously balances the intention-intensity variable, basically the sheer force of human intent, against the wild velocity constant of unbound thought. To keep things stable, they added a sovereign virtue coefficient. This was a democratic baseline built on ordinary, everyday human micro-victories. Ilyan Marr gave a really stark warning here. If this virtue baseline ever fell too low, specifically below the threshold of the square root of 7, the entire lattice would collapse into a singular void of psychological entropy. But there was a major structural flaw in this plan. You just can't demand absolute mathematical perfection from ordinary citizens who are already busy fighting materialized anger in the streets. This is where Master Adrian of Sybaris stepped in with a critical breakthrough. She called it the Allowance of the Smudge. She proposed scaling human imperfection into a liquid stabilization pool. By repurposing the obsidian pillars to mechanically absorb the friction of cognitive dissonance, they created a system that allowed ordinary people to stumble and make mistakes without instantly causing their houses to collapse around them. So the ledger remained wet, but the parchment was profoundly reinforced against tearing. Part 3. The Siege of the Travertine Terraces. But of course, before the ink on this formula could even dry, the primordial outer void launched a desperate counter-offensive against the physical world. And it didn't attack with traditional weapons or siege engines. It showed up as a creeping wave of gray, anti-reflective mist that just cascaded down the white terraces of Lyonesse. So the question became, how do you fight an unwritten canvas of absolute blankness? The artisans of the meritocracy of the chisel literally had to watch their lifeworks dissolve into a silent void that devoured color and memory. They were forced to figure out an entirely new way to fight absolute nothingness. This is where Master Artisan Eldrin did something incredibly counterintuitive. He didn't reach for his sculpting tools. Instead, he made a very public philosophical rejection of sterile perfection. He literally stepped directly into the creeping mist and celebrated the beauty of the flawed, broken line. And then he invited ordinary citizens, just the regular clay mixers and street sweepers, to simply press their bare, imperfect hands directly into the dissolving stone. And the result? This highly democratic application of human intent sparked an explosion of raw, unbuffered transmutation. Wherever the common citizens left their handprints, the gray mist stopped devouring form. Instead, it instantly crystallized. It turned into permanent, stunning new mountain ranges made of deep green jade and roaring rivers of liquid sapphire. They managed to convert formless chaos into hyper-vibrant architecture simply by embracing active, shared human agency. It's truly incredible. Part 4. Absolute Zero at the Edge of Lyonesse. Now, while Lyonesse was fighting chaos with active creation, the extreme northern metropolis was dealing with a vastly different but equally lethal threat. A quiet crisis of cosmic indifference was literally freezing the silver ink of reality into brittle needles. This caused a massive power drop across the transcentric network. Chief Engineer Martha, along with Master Philosopher Anzelin and their technicians, were entirely paralyzed by this absolute zero of sloth. They were just letting the geothermal engines wind down. The warrior Vassago saw this and realized philosophy wasn't going to cut it here. So he stepped forward and violently slammed his massive iron blade down onto the stone floor, creating a huge shower of brilliant white-hot sparks. It was a purely kinetic intervention, demanding dynamic labor over comfortable non-existence. That raw, kinetic weight of Vassago's action completely snapped Chief Engineer Martha right out of her stasis. Rejecting the lethal certainty of the ice, she lunged forward and slammed the primary geothermal ignition levers into maximum overdrive. The Leaf's caldera erupted. It blasted the city with superheated radiant silver steam, which instantly reversed the systemic deceleration and successfully reclaimed the hot-flowing silver ink of the cosmic ledger. Part 5. The Unified Reference Registry Matrix. This sudden surge of dynamic purpose out of Lethe was the final piece of the puzzle. It completed the network, reversed the void, and demanded a permanent structural guide to link all 7 metropolis. So this exhaustive, unified matrix was created to permanently map human character to physical reality. If you look at it, you can see Archon's crest governed by the calculus of alignment, overcoming pride to achieve protective stewardship, which literally manifests as travertine luminescence. You've got avarice overcoming greed for infinite abundance, Lyonesse utilizing intrinsic alignment, all the way down to Leafy, which overcomes sloth through dynamic purpose, yielding that geothermal silver steam. Every single conquered shadow corresponds directly to a very specific, beautiful material anomaly. From his watchtower up in the frozen gray wastes, which, by the way, had miraculously transformed into iridescent silver sands, High Chronicler Belial observed this radiant equilibrium. The latency buffer was officially structured, the 7 virtues were perfectly aligned, and the transcentric cascade had successfully converted the outer void into spectacular form. In that exact moment of profound stabilization, he validated the experiment for all future generations. But crucially, Belial did not close the book. He made a point to note that the eternal ledger must remain open. The architecture of human character is never truly finished. It's something that has to be chosen anew with every single rising sun. And so he deliberately left the book open to the warm morning breeze, declaring that the ink remains permanently wet. This ensures that the democratic baseline of human choice will continue to shape existence forever. As we wrap up this archival explainer, I want to leave you with a really profound question, one drawn directly from the mechanics of Chapter 184. Think about the harmonization index and the allowance of the smudge. If your world physically changed right this second, if the latency buffer on your own thoughts was permanently removed and your deepest intent instantly became physical reality, how would your daily intrinsic alignment actually shape the world you walk through? Would your thoughts manifest as shattered glass or as flowing sapphire rivers? It's something to think about. Thanks for exploring the archives with us today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.